There's a small moment that happens to a lot of people. Not during a big fight, not after some dramatic breakup, just on an ordinary evening. You might be standing in the kitchen or sitting in your car outside your home for a minute before going in. Out of habit, you open your phone, you scroll through your messages, and then you notice something. Something small, but strangely heavy. In conversation after conversation, the most recent message is from you. You were the one who asked, "Hey, how have you been lately?" You were the one who said, "Did you get home safe?" You remembered birthdays. You remembered when someone's family was going through a hard time. You remembered the little details people mentioned in passing. And you were the one who reached out first, again and again. Now here's the part that stays with you. So it's not that you were the one texting first. That part never really bothered you. The strange part is this. When you stop texting first, almost no one notices. No one asks where you've been. No one sends a message saying, "Hey, I haven't heard from you in a while." Nothing. Just silence. A silence so complete that you start to wonder, was I the only one keeping these conversations alive? Some people call that feeling bitterness. Some people say it's just part of growing up. They say life gets busy. And that's true. But most of the time, what people feel in that moment isn't anger. It's something quieter. It's exhaustion. A very specific kind of exhaustion. The kind that comes from being the person who has been holding the rhythm for too long. You probably know someone like this. Maybe it's even you. At work, they're the one who gently brings the meeting back on track when tension builds. They're the one who sends a private message afterward. "Hey, are you okay?" They're the one scheduling the meeting and reminding everyone again the next day so it doesn't fall apart. They're the one who manages the mood in the room, the one who makes difficult conversations possible. At home, they're the one remembering schedules, appointments, the small details that keep everyday life from unraveling. From the outside, it looks like responsibility. It even looks like strength. But when you live in that role for too long, something subtle happens. It stops feeling like a choice. It becomes a reflex. You start believing, if I don't do it, everything will fall apart. And here's something people rarely talk about. Your body remembers these moments, not the exact messages you sent, but the feeling after each one. The feeling of reaching out and no one reaching back. The feeling of showing up and realizing no one is really there with you. Psychologists sometimes call this social pain. Studies show that when people feel ignored or excluded, the brain reacts in ways very similar to physical pain. And anyone who has ever been left on seen when they needed a reply knows this feeling. The pain isn't just in your head. You feel it in your chest, in your throat. In the quiet way, you suddenly feel yourself getting smaller. So eventually, something changes. You open the chat window one day, and you realize you're not angry. You're not trying to make a point. You're just tired. You put the phone down, and you stop reaching first. What's interesting is that most people don't arrive at this moment because of one big betrayal. It's usually smaller things, things that repeat. A plan that gets postponed and quietly disappears. A promise of next week that never really comes. A moment when you share something honestly and the response you get is, "Yeah, Everyone goes through that. Not cruel, just absent. And when absence happens often enough, your nervous system learns something simple. Maybe it's safer not to reach out. But here's where things get complicated. Sometimes people aren't ignoring you. Sometimes they're just exhausted too. Everyone is busy. Everyone is overwhelmed. Everyone has more on their plate than they can handle. But from where you're standing, someone else's exhaustion can look exactly like neglect. And your nervous system can't always tell the difference between "they're overwhelmed" and "I don't matter." It only records the feeling. I'm alone in this relationship. There's another layer to this. Something that quietly drains people without them realizing it. It's called emotional labor. It's when you constantly read the room, when you predict reactions before you speak, when you step in to smooth tension between people, when you quietly carry the responsibility for the atmosphere around you. Some people do this all day at work, and then they go home and keep doing it. In friendships, in family conversations, in messages where they're always the one holding the emotional weight. So when someone stops texting first, sometimes they're not leaving, they're just ending another shift. And from the outside, silence always looks the same. But inside, there are actually two very different kinds of silence. One kind feels peaceful, not joyful, but calm, like stepping out of a room that has been too loud for too long. And finally, your ears get to rest. The other kind feels empty, numb. You still go to work. You still reply politely. You still do everything you're supposed to do. But inside, you feel slightly disconnected from your own life. Those two kinds of silence matter, because one is a boundary, and the other is your nervous system trying to protect itself. Not to punish anyone, just to survive. At this point, people often rush to label it. They say you're avoidant. They say you have attachment issues. But sometimes it's much simpler than that. You haven't stopped wanting connection. You've just stopped having the energy for one-sided connection. And at a certain stage of life, that's not a flaw. It's wisdom. It's your body finally agreeing with something it has known for a long time. Humans need connection. But we also need choice. There are seasons in life when you're not walking away from people. You're simply reclaiming the right to decide who you move toward and who you don't. Not because you think you're better than anyone, but because you've started to treat your own energy as something valuable. There's also a quiet loss that comes with this. When you stop reaching out first, you don't just lose a few connections. You also lose a version of yourself. The version who always tried to be easygoing, always tried to understand, always tried not to be a burden. That version helped you survive a lot of years. But it might also have made you forget what it feels like to be around someone without having to hold yourself so tightly. So if you're in that place right now, that moment where you suddenly don't feel like reaching out anymore, maybe you don't need to judge yourself. Maybe your body is simply saying something honest. Enough. Not enough love. Just enough endurance. You didn't stop reaching out because you became cold. You stopped because a part of you finally believes you deserve a kind of connection that doesn't hurt. It doesn't need to be dramatic. It doesn't need a big explanation. Sometimes it simply feels lighter. And sometimes That small feeling of lightness is the first sign that you're finally finding your way back to yourself. And I'm curious about something. Have you ever had that moment when you realized you were always the one reaching out first? If you're comfortable sharing, tell me in the comments. Sometimes the quiet stories we carry are the ones more people understand than we think. Thank you for taking the time to listen and for allowing me to be with you for the past few minutes. Have a good rest. Tomorrow is a new day. Wishing you peace and happiness.